Hey guys, this is Tolly and welcome to Let's Build a JRPG Part 19. Bit of a false start on Part 19, doing it again here. Hopefully everyone's still around. But yeah, we're continuing from where we left off in Part 18. I went and grabbed a bit of food, break, bit of technical difficulties on the start here, but now we're good. Let's jump back into where we were. So, we had set up a unit status, and we had built a prefab for the unit pair, so we can then have two statuses per unit because we have there's loud. Oh, what? No, nope. Okay. Oh, it's a good start to a video. Oh man, what a great content creator I am. All right, so we definitely know we're live. So this is all working. We have all this set up. We can have two statuses, one for our hero, one for a companion, and we have a unit pair that we can spawn, which is basically the frame that holds them. Now we need to build it so that this actually is hooked up to data. So we were looking at how the previous ones worked. So we used to have a character info view, which would show the character's HP and update this information. This was used by the status or the UI state machine. Not 100% sold that this needs to be in the UI state machine, but I think I'm going to leave it for now. Let's not mess with things too much. I think we want something similar, but we're going to want to initialize these things. We're going to want to generate them. So if we do find where this is used, this is done here. So this loops through the number of character views because it assumes that the number of character views is set. And then as long as the values match, we update it. But that's not what we want. What we actually want is we want to loop through the number of heroes and generate these things. I think I want to rewrite all of this. But this is the spot I think we want to build it, in the init UI state. So I think we want to have a loop through the units for turn order, not all units, and we want to build a list of heroes and enemies from that. Then we want to loop through the units, the heroes, and we want to create objects. These objects are not going to need to get created at a point, though. We're going to need the object to stick them under, which is going to be this unit status is where we're going to want to parent them. So UI state machine has a list of all the views right now. Instead, we're going to want to have this thing have a reference to the transform of, let's just do game object. The game object, and this will be caps locks is on. We want to have this be the status parent. Okay. Now back into init UI state. We're going to want to grab some logic from the combat character controller. This thing does some stuff with instantiation, right? No, it's the views I'm looking at. The turn order view. How do we do addressable, instantiate, async, and we give it the... Yeah. I still haven't memorized this call yet. So we're going to want to instantiate an object, and that object we're going to want to instantiate is going to be the addressable ID for the unit pair first. So we're going to want to grab this and put that in there. And we are going to want to give this the... we need something that's going to pass the parent along. So the owner has a status parent. we're going to want a status parent. We got there. And it's going to return a game object. Try and order it the same way that it shows up in the parent. Yep, okay. Okay, so now with this status parent, we can say, hey, I want to build that unit pair and I want to put it in the status parent location. We need to make sure we're using addressables in this file. Okay, and then once we load that object, we want to load another object based off of the hero and the companion. Yeah, we're going to want to load a second object, which is going to be the actual status. And that status will need to be parented to the object that we just loaded, the unit pair results.transform. So the object we just loaded, when we get that result, we want to get its transform and instantiate the UI status under it. We can't use object again, so this will be status. Object. And then we are going to want to do hero 0 or hero I. And I guess we want to initialize a view with this. So on our status object, we are going to want to add a character info view. Can still use this class. That's fine. We'll fill in this data later. But we're going to want to grab, now we know that UI status object that we get, which is status object dot results. When we generate that, we want to get the component character view, and we are going to want to initialize that with the hero. Okay. Then we are going to want to, from the hero that we currently have selected, we're going to want to get component companion. And we are going to want to check and see whether or not this thing has a companion. I assume that's logic we have, right? We must check to see if whether or not a companion exists somewhere. I mean, we could check to make sure companion is not null. Is that how we normally do this? I guess it is. Not my favorite way of doing it, but fine. And this should be a unit, so we'll just set this here. So we grab the companion. And then we check to make sure that it's not null. And if it's not null, we'll want to load another status panel. And this time we'll pass in the companion as the thing that it initializes with. Cool. And then we don't need any of this other nonsense. I don't think we're going to use the monster views, but we'll leave it here for now. And did anything else use that character info view? No, now there's no references to this, so we'll Go to the definition of the owner. This should no longer be needed. So we'll remove it here, and we'll remove it here. We'll leave the monster stuff until we do the monster updating status stuff in a bit. Okay, cool. So at this point, a lot of this stuff isn't hooked up, but if we hit run, it should ideally generate 4 UI pairings with 4 companions. Ideally. Maybe. When it finishes loading. I believe in you, Unity. I believe. I know you can do this. You have the power. Unity doesn't have the power. I figured it out. Okay, cool. So now if we hit play, we should see the game load up, and it should generate a bunch of UI pairs and UI statuses. And then we need to hook those up to actually do stuff in game. That's going to have failed because we didn't set up the parent, hopefully. Be the reason, be the reason, be the reason. Not quite what I expected. Okay. Well, unfortunate. Problem number 1 is it looks like it added too many units to the heroes. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the enemies probably aren't being set to the right alliance then? Let's go check. Enemies. Enemy 1. Cactus Man. His alliance is enemy. So he shouldn't have gotten added. Alright, let's debug through and see what's happening. I hate it when things don't just work. They should just work. I should write code that works, and it just does what I expect. But it doesn't always work that way. Here we go. Let's find out why it's busted. First off, let's figure out why it's making 7 pairs. Then we need to figure out why it didn't make the companion statuses, because it was only making 1 per box anyways. Okay, don't care about these breakpoints anymore. Here we go. So there are 6 units in this battle. That would be the bug. I'm using the wrong unit list. I'm looping through the units per battle, but then looping through all of the units. So it's doing bad things. It's not matching up. Still busted. Is it as busted as badly? 1, 2, 3, yes, 6. Okay. Well, I thought I had it. Oh, I see another problem. This should also be units for turn order. That's likely the other problem. So anywhere else where I'm using units in here? No. Okay. Step by step, we're getting there. Really doesn't like loading init unit or init UI. Don't know why that script is so much trouble for Unity. It's probably trouble for my computer. I plan to get a computer upgrade in the near future, so this will be less of a problem. Okay, so we got the 4 status panels, but we're not seeing the companions load. That's a problem. That sounds like a solvable problem. Yeah, so there were 2 bugs. There was bug number 1, I was using the wrong lists in conjunction with the right list. And then bug number 2, well, we'll see what that is. We should be grabbing the companion. If the companion is not null, initialize a character view that we get off of that object with the companion. Yeah, I don't think there's any copy and paste errors there. That all looks right. And we should expect each hero to have a companion. Alright, well, let's see what the code says. Let's find out what's actually happening. Interesting. It doesn't seem to like the way that we've written the logic, is my best guess. Just trying something to see if like it's a scoping issue. Does it lose track of heroes? Seems odd that that would be the problem though. The code we're writing is a little bit finicky though, because what we're doing is we're on complete saying call a function in which the parameter will be an object. That object will be the result of that instantiation. So this code here feels a little bit... It's happening at a weird time state. Like it happens later, not at the moment that you think it does. Because we're embedding functions. Unity's acting up. All right. Stop. Thank you. Now we'll attach the debugger. For some reason, it wouldn't let me close Unity while it was running. Okay. So we have the debugger attached. We go into Unity. We hit play. It thinks for a while. How's everything going over here in Streamland? I miss any messages or anything? A few of you guys lurking. I see, I see. What was that? Unity? Are you gonna go? Hasn't hit a breakpoint or anything yet. Okay, it's loading. Good, good. Okay, we don't care about this part. Oh, it got here. It seems to be loading them. Yeah, interesting. Oh, still getting a null reference though. Oh, that's inside of character info, which I'm not so concerned about. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why I would have to... Why I would have to have the unit set to an object in a local space here and then use that local space object to get it to work instead of just using this one. But it's some sort of scoping issue, but that fixes it. I don't know why, but I know how to fix it. All right, so that's it. We've done it. Isn't that it? We're finished. Not quite, sadly. So we now have these heroes generated and we have their status panels behind them, one for each. But now we need to populate these. So we need to add the portraits of the different units and we need to have these status numbers update as we go. So we did just add that script to the old character info script, but we probably want to heavily modify this thing. Step 1, let's open the prefab. And then let's hook up the fill bars. So we have a HP text value. We'll hook that up there. Character's name we're not using, so we'll probably remove that in a second. Target button we don't have anymore. And we have fill bar, which will be this one. Okay, so we want to remove character name. I mean, for now, let's just comment this out. We may eventually want to add the name, but definitely don't need a target button anymore. So this can go. Target button's gone. Weren't even using it. ATB, is that being used? That was for showing the ATB progress, which we don't need anymore. Oh, which is what that fill bar was. But now we want a HP bar. Okay, so let's just reuse this. So this will be HP bar. This will be HP. HP's fine. So we'll have HP and HP bar. And then we'll have SP and SP bar. And then we don't need ATB anymore, so that can go. And then we update it based on the stats. Now we do this on update, which is kind of gross. We don't, most of the time the character's HP will not be changing, so there's no reason to be changing the text every frame. So there's a better way to do this. The better way to do this is to instead set up some events that whenever the health changes, we update the UI in the same way that we did for the element manager, I think. Okay, so we need to set HP bar. HP bar, there we go. Wasn't letting me drag for a second. SP bar and SP text. And you know what? For the time being, let's also just comment out character name. You know what? If we need to add it back, we can add it back. Let's just clean this up. Okay, good. Now, let's take a look at element view. No. Can we see where this is being used to try and track down the script I'm looking for? Which one is it? Element display. I need to get better at consistent naming. All right, so this thing here checks to see on notification of the element changed. Then we update some text. We want to do the same thing in the character view. We want to have probably on a init. Add observer. We're not going to need this initialize anymore either. fact, we're not going to need to grab the stats. So on init, add an observer. It might actually work on enable as well. It's tricky. Because we need to have reference to this unit character to know who's calling. I'm going to write it in a fancy way. Okay, instead of element manager, where is this used? I need an example. You pass in the stats. Okay, cool. That's the instance part. Oh, you need it for both. Yeah, we're going to need it for both. Okay. Okay, cool. We want to grab from here. So this stats value will need to be based off of this stats is equal to character dot get component stats. And from here, we pass that in to these locations. Now the trick is, does this get called before this gets called? And I'm going to test just by doing a debug.log because I'm not entirely sure. Init character dot display name. On enable status get component. We'll remove all of this in a second. I just want to see which one gets called, and we're going to be calling this for each unit, so I need to make sure that I know which unit is which. Cool. And then how does this normally work? What does this function do? We can expect it to be the value. Okay. I still think I want this call specifically. I actually don't care what the values were. I think the thing I want is if at any point MP or max MP changes, we want to just grab those values and set the text to whatever they are. And then we want to do the same thing for HP. Same logic. Same everything. And then this needs to be on HP. And this needs to be a max HP. Same thing above, HP, max HP. Down here, HP, max HP. Okay. And then we also want to update the progress bars. So for the health bar, we're going to grab it. We're going to get the fill amount. We're going to set it to be whatever HP divided by max HP is, whatever that ratio ends up being, we will show the fill bar. Might be worth adding a clamp to this as well so that it can't go above or below 1. Is that an easy thing to do real quick? Math f dot clamp 0 to 1. Look at that. There's a function right for it. Okay, so this has to be between 0 and 1. It can't go above or below because we don't want the fill bar to extend too far. Cool. And that should be that. The only trick now, well, we're not going to need an update anymore, so we're not going to update the text on every frame. Just when we receive an event that HP or max HP or MP or max MP has changed, will we update the statuses. The question, though, is which of these happens first? Because, yeah, it'll be a thing. I can fix it regardless of if a init comes after on enable, but I'm pretty sure on init is going to happen after, actually. There's going to be a little bit more code we're going to write, but let's just test it and see what the debugs say. Ooh, no references. Because status hasn't been set. Yeah, so this gets called first. So what we can do is if status equals null, then we won't try and add it. But we will do the add on a init. So this way, if somehow the UI gets turned on and off, it will re-add it on enable still. But for the very first time when we initialize, we'll do it this way. Seems semi-reasonable. There is a world in which maybe these do come... No, I think this order is pretty fixed. We'll always call init after we call enable. So I think this code is okay. I wonder if it's possible to just call on enable here. Can we just call the function? It's a little bit cleaner. Status does not equal null. Okay. Catching my bugs before I have to see them fail. Good. Good. Everything's good. All right. Let's stop this and restart. And ideally, we should see the HP update, hopefully. It didn't, because the first time we also need to call it. Because the HP will update, but it'll update the first time it gets called. But we should also... We should call update text on the very beginning. And then just for cleanliness, we'll make sure that we do the exact same code in both places by creating a function for this. So HP. So on HP change, update HP text. On SP change, well, on MP, I call it SP outwardly in the game, but I call it SP to the user, but I think internally all our code says MP, which probably means it should all just say MP so that there's no confusion in the code, honestly. I'll have to rehook these up, but yeah, I should not change my naming convention. If it's called MP, it should be MP in the code. And if I want to call it SP to the user, that's fine, but for the code side, it should match. Okay, we're getting there. Lots of hookup. This is going to need to be reset. So I guess, again, sake of consistency, it should be MP. But again, I kind of like the idea of skill point more than mana magic points. Okay, that all looks correct. Okay, so the statuses have been updated. And the statuses should get updated when we run. The last thing that we're not doing is the portraits. We should probably also set the portrait value. Those are some stats. Okay. Let's get the portraits up and running. So we're going to need another image for portrait. And then we should be able to go grab the portrait code very easily from the turn order stuff. Load sprite addressable. This is the chunk of code we need. So inside of character view on a init, we also need to do a load of the character. Show good. The character portrait load. Portrait image. Sprite is set to sprite result. Okay, so we load the asset async sprite of the character's portrait, which is a string value. This is going to go find that sprite. It's going to load it. On load, it will then set the portraits, which we have here, this image sprite, to the sprite result. Okay. I think I'm going to have to go modify the game design data a little bit as well. Right. Okay, so characters, these guys are using the face asset, which I don't think I want anymore. I think I want it to use, where'd that art go? Art folder, companion icon. Okay. And then let's go back to our design data. Let's input that the character portrait for the companions will be the companion portrait. And then we will download TSV, overwrite the character data, save, go back into here, run the tools, run the character parser, parses that data in. We should be able to see that updated. Well, we should be able to see by running the game, but yep. Companion portrait is updated in the JSON. So now when we run the game, we'll load that design data and say, hey, for this character, load this asset. Helps if we set status to something. Status. Where did the prefab folder go now? Open. We need to set the portrait to be the portrait. There we go. Now it'll work. Maybe. Hopefully. 10% chance? 90% chance? I think it's 100% chance. Yay, success. That being said, they are loading in the wrong order. Which I think is just a positioning problem, to be perfectly frank. I think character 1 is at the bottom of the screen and character 4 is at the top of the screen. We can just flip that. Yeah. Yeah, let's flip it. Let's flip positions. Okay, character 1 is at 3.5, 0.85, negative 8.2. Character 2 is currently positioned at 3.25, 0.8, negative 4.39. These numbers are ridiculous. I said it last stream. Actually, I guess it was part 17 now. But I said it in part 17 and I still think it's ridiculous. At some point I will fix this, but I'll probably do it off camera because it's going to be kind of finicky just relaying these guys out. Not that I don't do finicky things on camera as well, but and 2.85, 0.6, 3.23. Didn't need to write them all down, I guess, technically, but let's copy the transform of this and paste it into here. Copy 2. Paste it into 3. Yeah, I only need to write 2 of them down. Okay, and now this should be 3's values, which was 3.38, 0.62, negative 0.47. And then this needs to be 4's values, which was 2.85, 0.6, 3.23. And they should be flipped. Or I messed it up completely. But I wrote the values down to begin with, so I should be able to figure it out. Even if it is a broken. Nope. All right. Fireboy. Ice Boy. Earth Boy. Lightning Boy. Holy Batmans, it's looking more like a thing. It's completely overwhelming amounts of data, but I will deal with that in the future. Now is not the time. These values went to 0. That's a bug. Yeah, that's an int value. So when you divide integers by integers, you get integers. Integers can't have decimals. So we must first cast this to a float. And then cast this to a float. And then when we divide, we'll get some value that can actually be between 0 and 1. As integers, if you divide two integers, you get 0. Okay. Cool. What was I going to do next? Enemy health. We were going to indicate enemy health by showing a piece of text above the enemy's head when it gets selected. So let's start again because there's some null references because we made changes to the code. So we'll restart. Should work fine now. So if we select this enemy, it'd be nice if we showed underneath them the name of that enemy. It'd also be nice if we showed which gray box was which. So when we selected it, it'd be nice if it also selected on the UI down here. It's a bit more of a challenging thing because right now this selection has no idea about this selection, and I don't even think when we select something that we have an on selected state really per se. Let's start with the text part. Sorry, got lost in thought thinking about how we can have it so that when something gets selected we show it down here, but for now, let's start with having it so that when we select one of these guys, a name appears above them with that name tinted with a green, yellow, or red, depending on how damaged they are. Which I think, in general, we'll have to start by setting up an on selected, I guess. Let's see. Where to begin? Well, number one, we can already show things next to things because we have, when we select this action panel, we align that against this character. So we already have the ability to do that somewhere. Let's go take a look at that code that I wrote like a week ago that I've forgotten. Action panel, menu action panel. Where does this thing change its transform? Selector to position button transform. Selector is a component that we have on characters. From that selector we can get the button, which we literally just called button, lol. And then from that button we can find the relative position on the screen to set a thing. Okay. So I guess the question I'm asking myself is, where do we do this logic? Like, where do we do the initialization, the initial positioning of the characters? And we used to have monster info panels, which used to cover showing the names. And I think we were just looking at that code for the character stuff, which I said I'd have to come back to. So let's go find that UI state manager. What was it called? UI init? Init UI state. So in here, we set up the monster info panel view things. So maybe we need to do the same thing here. We grab all the enemies, then we run through those enemies and instantiate like an enemy info section. That's like step one. Step one is getting the UI to be in the game. And I guess we can start with that, and the UI toggling on and off when you select them, we can do second. Okay, that's a plan. Let's call that a plan. So we're going to go through the enemies, and we will instantiate some sort of UI element, and we will position that UI element not to be around a status parent, like some certain spot in the game, but based off of that enemy's selector button, we will position that new prefab. So first up, let's find that prefab, or let's build that prefab. So inside of the game, if we might be best to build this prefab while running, because we're going to need to reference it off of the characters. It shouldn't even be that complicated, to be perfectly honest. It's really just a piece of text that we tint. So if we... Technically, wherever we put it, we still need to parent it here. So maybe we just use UI status as the same parent. I don't think it needs an image behind it, but maybe it does. I guess for the time being, I don't know what the UI in this game really looks like. I'm still figuring it out every step of the way. So let's start with there just being something behind. So let's say that there's another panel. This object has we can give it an element, a layout element, and we can tell it to ignore the layout rules so that it doesn't actually get parented under the horizontal view thing. And then we can grab this object and we can drag it to be near the enemy. Do we want it below them or above them? I feel like below them is the right call. 0.25. Oh, wrong value. 0.25. 1.5? 2. Okay. And then let's change it to be maybe 40 high and 150 wide. Okay, and then this will be the enemy nameplate. And it needs a piece of text to show the name of the enemy. Enemy name. And we want this thing, I think, to be scaled to the size of the nameplate. And we probably want it to be 24 and centered. I still think that we could go smaller on the framing. Yeah, I like that a lot more. Okay. Give the text more room. What did we end up using for fonts? I'll need to find real fonts at some point, but for now, what font did we like off of the names here? Right, we've been using the Anton, so try and keep this consistent. I like that one because it's bolded. Essentially, it's a little bit easier to read. '18's probably a bit better. Based off that, do we want to make this a bit smaller? Yeah, I think that's reasonable. We want to keep the width large, but I think that can be small. And then if we tint that name, if we say make it red, is that still readable? This is also not at full size. This is zoomed out a little too far. This would be the actual level of resolution. So we probably wouldn't use that red. We'd probably want something a little bit more, I don't know, not so harsh. Such a harsh red. It's so hard to read. Oh yeah, make it not closer to white makes it pink, but we can go like a darker red, which helps a bit. Okay, so we'll figure out like a maroony kind of red for that, but that should be readable. Honestly, even going up to 20 helps a lot. And then if we go to 20, I want to make this like a couple pixels bigger, just so that G isn't cut off anymore. Okay, let's go with that. So this will be a nameplate for an enemy. Let's make this a prefab that we can now instantiate. Okay, and then we actually want this thing to also have the monster info view, I think. And then let's open prefab. Monster info view, we want the monster's name. And this thing no longer needs a target button either, so we can remove the target button. And I think we're going to want to do the exact same logic we just did on the character. So when health changes, we want to update, but we're not going to update. We'll update the color, not the actual value of the text. I do feel like maybe we want to have the colors be defined by us as well. Seems reasonable. Let's make a new class. Public class. Damage color. And we will give this a public int threshold. Is that how you spell threshold? Yeah, let's just use this. How dumb am I? Oh, not dumb. Okay, cool. Threshold and then public color value. And this can be tint color, I guess. Seems reasonable. And then we can do serializable. So we want this thing to be serializable so that it will show up in the Unity. Nope. Why are you complaining? Well, apparently I can't spell serializable, so I think it's because it auto-corrected me. But now I'm just so confused. Okay, fine. My brain's fried. Unity, serializable. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. It's going to complain because it can't find it, but now I want system.serializable. We got there. Okay. And then we want to have a damage color list, I think. And this can be the damage colors. All right. And the idea behind this is that we want to be able to what is it erring about? I'm saved, aren't I? What's the problem? Oh, something's trying to use the target button that we just removed. What is this comment? I don't think I care. I think that that is based off of previous assumptions that are no longer valid. Okay, come back. Unity's refusing to open. Fine, whatever, Unity. Didn't need you anyways. We need to bring this stuff over to the monster views. Okay. Let's see. In here we need the same thing as here. So we want to bring over these on enable, on disables. The difference being that we don't need it for MP. We only need it for HP. Same idea. We want to grab the stats. I don't think we need to hold on to the unit. But we'll leave it for now. And then on HP did change. We need this function. Target button pressed we no longer need. Okay, so we don't need unit, but we can do this. And we need to write a function for on HP change, and I'm going to be extra lazy, and I'm just going to grab the logic from over here. And now we have on HP tint, and then the monster name dot color will be equal to some value based off of the HP, which will be some percentage. So we will get the percentage of the HP remaining percent. And then based off of that percent, we will do a calculation to determine what the color should be. Now, in order to do that, I need Unity to open. Unity, are you going to stop doing whatever you're doing? No? Unity? Unity? Unity, I want to show something. I want to talk about a thing and I want to show it. Thank you. Okay, so we have damage colors. So let's say there's 3 damage colors. There will be a... I guess a greenish one. There will be a kind of orangey one. And then there will be the red one. They're not my favorite colors in the world, but I'm not an artist and I can't figure this out. So, or I can't, it'll take me a long time to decide on something that I like. So let's go with this. So we have green, yellow, red. My thinking is if it is above a specific threshold, we use that color. So if it's above 75, did I make this an integer? I made this an integer. I need this to be a float. If the remaining health percentage is above 75%, it's green. If it is above, I don't know, 40%, it's yellow. And if it's above 0, it's red. That's my thinking. So how do we write that code? Well, let's loop through the damage colors for each. For each should be fine. Damage color in damage colors. We check if the remaining percentage, so this could come out as something like 60%. And if it is greater than this damage color threshold, then we will set the monster name's color to that damage's color, tint color. And we will break, which basically says, I want out. I'm done with this for loop. I don't want to be here anymore. And we will leave. So once we find the first one, we'll tint it that color that we find, and we'll leave. So if it's above 70%, we tint it green, we leave. If it's below this 75% for the first one, which is green, then it will move on. And then if it's above 60 or 40%, then it'll tint it yellow. Otherwise, if it's above 0, then it'll tint it red. Ideally, maybe, who knows? Well, it might work. Seems like it should. Okay, so this is the monster info setup. Now we have to go back a step because I kind of got lost down this rabbit hole, and we need to actually initialize these things. So we need to give this prefab we're playing with a name, addressable name, so that we can load it by name. Oh, I want a new computer. Oh, I want a new computer. I want a new computer. We want to find the prefab, enemy nameplate. It can be called that. I think that's fine. UI enemy nameplate. Okay. And then we want to load an object. Called enemy nameplate. Okay. I see the complaint. Okay, fixed. Probably want to do the same thing here. Enemy. And then we want to init the monster info. Info view. With the enemy. Okay. Last thing. When we initialize this, we also want to get the unit's selector. Get component selector dot button dot transform. Transform unit position. Okay, so we want to grab the unit's position, and then we want to position this thing below it. So to do that, I'm going to need to do a little bit of math, and that math will be based off of some of the anchoring points. So we need to run the game. Where do we keep these selectors? Invisible unit selectors. There's some positioning weirdness I'm trying to figure out in my head. So the problem is this enemy nameplate is stuck underneath of this enemy status, which I'm not super thrilled about. So I can't just set the position because I have to base it off of this. So maybe I don't want to stick this under unit status. I can't stick it under here because if I stick it under here, it'll disappear because this object is turned off. Can I get like global position? Can I get like position, like true position? I can get its true position. So if I use the true position, I might be able to just work around what I'm running into problems with. Normally I like using local, I guess, but okay. So let's say no, I didn't really change anything. I just added a thing and removed it. There was no real changes, Unity. Okay, so this thing has a pivot of 0. Right, okay, so there's a little bit of math we have to do here. So basically what I want to do is I want to say, hey, this enemy plate, I want to set it to be the exact same position as this ghost, but the ghost currently has its position, its local position. Yeah, its pivot right now is here. So I want this object to actually be at the bottom of this box and over here. But I can't change this pivot because I'm currently using this pivot to like align this box to here, as well as a couple other things. So I think what I want to do is I want to do the math on this. So I want to say, hey, whatever your current position is, I want to do plus half of your width, or half of your height and plus half of your width to find my position. And then for this nameplate object, I actually want to have its anchor point be at the top of it in the center. So this is where it'll be positioned by. Okay, cool. So I want to take this position. I want to find the unit's position, and I want to find a vector 3. No, I can just do this dot transform dot position should be equal to the unit's position plus the unit's we got to do this way. New vector 3 unit, so the unit's x position transform dot no this value. The unit's position dot x plus the unit dot I actually want it to rect transform. UI elements that have like this thing here, this is actually a rect transform which has like this width, height, and pivots and other values that the Unity 3D rec, the standard Unity transform doesn't have. So I actually want to get this unit's rect transform so that I have access to its width, which is size delta dot x is its width, divided by 2. So I want to add to the position half of its width, and then the same thing to its y. So we want to be at its y position, but plus half of its height. And then we can just be at the unit position dot z. That's fine. That might do it. That might anchor the nameplates center below each of the units. I believe it's possible that I could have gotten it right. Well, I didn't, but that's because Unity's dumb. It's not dumb. I forgot that the Y is opposite. So if you want to go, I want to go down on the Y, not up. So I want to go down by half of its height. All right, and now it looks like otherwise this is working. It was showing up. There was 3 of them. They each had their own nameplates. That all seemed good. It's just the positioning was a little bit off with my math. Or my math was a little bit off with where I wanted them positioned. Okay, cool. Good, good. Sorry, close my water bottle. And in my frantic happiness. Okay, so now we have these guys with these values. But we want this nameplate to only show up if and only if wow, Cactus Man is weak. Okay, yeah, I just totally skipped over his name. We want this to only show up if you're selecting them. So only at the moment that you select them do we want these nameplates to show up, which I don't think we have any logic for yet. I think this is a brand new piece of functionality that I'm going to have to figure out. So how do we have it so that the names are only visible when you select them? Do we have any kind of indication when you select them? Like, obviously the arrow is moving, but that's based off of some, like, simple nonsense, basically. Essentially, the way the selection system is working, because we haven't really talked about it, because I did it off camera in between part 17 and 16. I set it up so that we're using Unity's navigation. So if we go in here and we look at these buttons, these are Unity's like custom navigation system where it's like, hey, I recognize all these buttons are interconnected, so I'm going to let you move your cursor around trying to interconnect between these buttons. Right now it's doing it automatically, so it's a bit of a mess. I would like to clean this up so that it was a little bit more like character goes down to character, character goes down to character, left goes to monster, right goes to my specific companion, because sometimes it, like, what is this doing? Going right on this goes down to this companion? Like, maybe I want that, but probably not. Maybe I only want up and down. But I want to get rid of some of this with less automatic, more programmatic. But for now, it's been fine. My point, though, is when I move the cursor around in the game, what's happening is Unity saying you want to move from this button to this button. Sweet. And it just now selects this button. But these buttons are invisible. So I wrote a simple pointer class that this navigation pointer just points at anything that's selected. So it just grabs whatever the current selected object's transform is and it sets its transform to that. So it's only once we hit enter on a thing that we actually select it. And when we hit enter, we're basically calling that button's on press command. So this button, you can't see it, but I've set some custom on click commands for these buttons that cause you to select them and to have the game play. So essentially, what do you... Oh, I'm trying to WSD in the wrong spot. I have this cursor just moving around, but we have no idea what we're currently looking at. But like Unity knows, but the game, we have no game logic that cared right now when you look at something. But we need some. So how do we do that? How do we want to do that? There's actually quite a few different ways that we could do this. Like we could embed it inside the pointer, which would be awful, but we could have it in the pointer that whenever the selection changes, not only do we update the position, we're also doing this every frame. We should probably only do this every time the object has changed. We should probably save whatever the current selected game object is. And anyways, it's not the point. The point is we could come into here and we could say, hey, whatever you have selected, grab its button and then maybe have something on the button that remembers its unit. Maybe that's the ticket. Like maybe these buttons that I build need to have a script attached to them that remembers what unit they're attached to. And when they... Can I do an on... Does Unity have an on selected that I can call? Unity on button selected? Interesting. This is the way I was thinking about it. This is the proper solution. Okay, okay. So we need to write a new script. Close all this tile map stuff. UI here. We want to add a new script, which will be on unit selected. And on unit selected needs to use that Unity on selected function. That makes sense though, that Unity would have an on selected function. And helpful and useful. Good job, Unity, at making things that I like and want to use. What is happening? Oh, no, 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 no. Stop. Okay. Unity got confused and opened the wrong thing. So we want our onSelected to be a selection handler. We need to be using the Unity event system. And then we need to use the onSelected. Okay, now we need to add this script to the buttons that we generate, which should be, I think it was a script called setup. Selector setup. Here we build the button object by scratch. We literally add the images and whatnot. But now we also want to add probably here, add component on unit selected. So now this button will have this script as well. We don't really do this a lot. I don't do this a lot, so you haven't seen me do it on stream very much. But generally this, like constructing an object, like making a new game object and then setting its position in the world and then adding all the components by hand. Normally I just use a prefab. But for this, I don't know, it just seemed to make sense because this was a pretty simple thing. But now it's starting to become more complicated, so maybe at some point I'll replace this with a prefab. But for now, it's still relatively straightforward to add a script that has no references or anything on it. Although it does need one. It needs to know, but this is still fine. It needs to know what unit it's attached to. Nope, stop. I guess I'll write in a init function for it. That feels good. That feels... I'm getting tired and I'm misclicking. Okay. Hands. On F and J. Focus. Jeez. Init. Wow. And we want to have this thing have a reference to public unit. We want this thing to take in a unit, and we want to set that unit to this unit. And then for the sake of testing, let's say display name was selected to see if this works. Okay, now we go back to setup, we call init, we set the unit. And now these buttons should call, or should print a message that they were selected and this was the name of the unit who selected them, or the name of the unit that is being selected. It's going to do a thing. It's going to do a thing. Okay. Yeah. And then I'm going to post an event. We're going to send a message then. Once this is all working, we're going to write some code that will send a message whenever this button is selected, so that anyone can listen to that and be like, hey, I care. Ghost selected. Ghost selected. Knight, wizard. Sorry, I'm looking down here, and you can also see it here. Archer, lightning, golem, ice, fire. Okay. So that's working. So now we want to post an event. I feel like we did this very recently. Where did we do the override one? Was this on death? Yeah, here we go. So Sweet. All right, cool. And now who's going to listen for this? How was the listen done? That was done here and this way. We're going to do the same thing on monster. Info view. Okay, so we're going to add a new observer here and a new, we're going to remove that observer here. And this is going to be on unit selected, selected notification. When it hears this, it will call a function. And instead of on death, this will be on selected notification. Ooh, we need two though, don't we? We need on selected and we need on deselected. Okay, well, one step at a time. I'm not even done writing the code for this part. So we need this thing to toggle on and off. But we don't want to turn off the game object, because if we turn off the game object, this thing won't update. So I could change the script around so that this script was on a empty game object, and then the panel and the image were below. But I think the thing that I'm going to like to do more is I'm just going to add a canvas group component. Sweet, sweet, okay. And then canvas group dot alpha equals 0. Oh, no, equal 1. Yeah, better. Okay. So that should work. Let's go hook up that on the prefab. Prefab? Prefab. Nameplates. Open prefab. Cool. Let's default it to 0. So it will be off by default. It will be off by default. And then when we select it, it will appear. Okay, that makes sense. We didn't actually add any logic to tell about anything. Okay, so we need some extra code. This part. And then I got a little ahead of myself. We need to get the units from the sender, and we need to check whether or not that unit equals there's a reason to hold on to the unit after all. If my unit equals the unit that has been called, then set mine to 1. Now, next question. Is there an on deselect? Is fantastic. Oh, it needs the deselect handler. Okay. So it needs this. Okay. Needs this. And that should be all it needs. And then we're going to want to post notification for on deselect. Like so. Call deselect. And now we need to add the same logic to the monster info view that we just did again. Deselect. I wonder if deselect is going to get called when we push enter on the object. Sorry, I realized no one's been chatting in a while, and I'm wondering if my chats are broken. It's also possible that people are just lurking. But okay, why are you? Did I not hit play like twice now? So they're not there. It selects. Okay, cool. Now, if I hit enter, it doesn't go away. Okay. Is there anything else? This is what I was afraid of. Because I have a bad feeling. Let's find out. There might be a solution here. Actually, a pretty simple solution. So if we look at the event system, it's currently selecting... Oh, can I not see what it's currently selecting? Current selection is Cactus Man. If I hit enter, object is none. Now it's button. So it is changing the current selection. It just isn't calling deselect when I hit enter. What can I do to fix that? I could set up yet another event. question is, I guess, how does the input even work here? We create a button, we set that button. Add listener, select button. This sends a message that target button was pressed. I can listen for this too. It's fine. It's less than ideal. I wish that it would actually call deselect when we select a button. But I guess here... Why does that not work though? Is it because we manually... This calls like the ability system. But like... My question is... Where do we deselect? I guess. Because we turn all these buttons off. I guess we don't. Well, we cause the pointer to disappear. So the pointer disappearing must mean that somewhere we are setting the value of current selected to null. Maybe that's the problem. So I can fix this for sure via just adding another event. But I am curious if maybe the way that we're doing... Is it just that I need to call this null on selected? Would that do it? When we say, hey, I've been selected, what if I just set the current selected object to null? Would that cause it to disappear? I would guess not, but I feel like I'm missing somewhere too. Like somewhere we must already be doing this. It can't be assigned to read only. Huh. So this is how we call it. That's why I couldn't find it before. Yeah, here. This is how it happens. After we exit the target state by hitting enter, we disable all valid unit selectors, which at that point sets the selected game object to null. But by calling it selected game object to null, I feel like that's when we are not calling deselect. That's the question. Oh. Does that work? When we turn off all the buttons by disabling the unit values, if we call deselect on all buttons, will that cause the monster nameplate to disappear? This feels a little hacky to me. Honestly, it feels a little bit more than a little hacky, but it might be a solution that doesn't involve more, because we already have an event that we're listening for. We just need to make sure that event is called. No. This should work. We should be able to call on deselect on this object. There's no reason this shouldn't be valid. Nope. Does not call on deselect. Just going to add it everywhere I can. Oh, hey, Morphus. Day's going pretty good. Streaming for about 4 hours now. Had a 2-hour stream and now did part 18 for like 2 hours and then stopped for lunch and then back for another 2 hours. Lots of progress. Lots of really solid progress. Fading a bit now, which is why I keep going silent for long periods of time. But, yeah. Basically stuck on one problem. So we got it so... we did a bunch of things this morning. We got it so that when we kill a unit, they disappear off of the turn order system on the bottom. We also got it so that we are initializing status panels with information about each character. We got it so that we have panels underneath the enemies appearing and disappearing based off of their selection. And we also have it so that their name changes based off how much damage they've taken. The last thing we're trying to solve is when I select a guy, the panel refuses to disappear. I'm about ready to give up. We're calling on deselect on the button. This thing... where is it? Where'd my script go? On unit select. We are calling on post notification when this happens. We are doing this from multiple locations, and according to other people, you should be able to call on select and on deselect manually. Alright, well, I'm done. I'm done with that. We're going to just do it the slightly more inefficient way in which we already send a notification called target button pressed. So we know when the button's been pressed via this notification. So we're just going to have our monster info panel also disappear on that press. Okay, so add, remove in the same ways we already do. Target button pressed. We don't need any of this logic. Instead, we just need this stuff, I think. And if unit equals my unit, then set me to 0. Same logic. Cool. And that should do it. And if it doesn't now, then I'm going to be furious. Well, not furious, but I will be perturbed. Thank you. Okay, good. Next step. Let's actually kill him and make sure that works. Okay, and then we can't toggle over to him. Okay, cool. That's starting to feel real good. Feel real good indeed. All right, so next, I would like it so that the bottom UI selects which person you have on the turn order. Enemies have been able to die for a long time, Amorphous. Maybe I haven't shown it enough, but enemies are very killable. Alright. So now... yeah, the next thing is I want whoever you have selected to highlight down here. Mostly for the enemies. I mean, that's fair. I mean, most of the time I jump in and I'm checking like one thing to be like, does this show the way I think it does? No? Out. I don't usually do enough attacks to kill something. I still need to do a whole design pass. honestly, that's what I'm putting off right now, is the damage numbers that I do and they do, and magic attacks and all that stuff. Like, sometimes these characters do like 1 damage. That's because they're using a magic attack, but the enemy has high magic defense, or they have low attack. Like, all the numbers are kind of screwy. That's like the next big thing I have to do, is fix all that. But I'm putting it off by continuing to work on usability things. So yeah, I think the kind of the last piece, though, before the last thing I can do before I have to go into actually working on the design and getting the number values set up, is having it so that the selection here shows who's who. Because well, 2 more things. I also need to get it so this turn order isn't just based off of the unit load order. Right now it's fixed to always be red, blue, brown, yellow, and then the 2 enemies. I want to get that based off speed, so I want some sort of calculation on turn order, some sort of initiative rolling. And then once I have that, it'll be very important to be able to tell which of the gray cubes is actually about to go next, because I might want to kill him, or try and kill him, or stun him, or some other stuff that I might try and add. So I need to have it so that when this happens, the on select call that we make also gets heard by this cube, which shouldn't be too bad, right? Because now we have all of the notification sending. It's a question of, well, number 1, where are those cubes? Next round, down here, we have round icons. We're in debug mode. Let's go back to normal. Does this have a script on it? It doesn't. But it could. But it could. What could I even do to this thing to make it noticeable? I guess I could add another UI element behind it, another image. Oh, it can't be behind it. It has to be... I may have to rewrite this prefab a little bit. Oh, Unity's not letting me edit values. That means I need to close and reopen Unity. Yeah, I'll need to rejig the round counter, probably. But I should be able to write a script that essentially does the same listening here and turns on and off a highlight cube if the unit matches. That should be very doable. Should be very doable. Where do we do the setup for the turn? These things. The turn order view is where we manage this. This is where we generate these objects. And right now these objects just load up the sprite based off of the unit's portrait. But we can add a script that we can grab from round icon that saves the unit and then listens to see whether or not the unit that's selected is of the same type that this round icon is intended for. Yeah, this is going to be pretty straightforward. If Unity decides to open again, that is. And then I think we've got most of the usability. We'll be showing the current stats of the heroes. We'll be giving you some indication of the health of the enemies. We'll be able to see in which turn order each unit is going. It's starting to feel like a thing. It's really the balancing next. It's got to be getting those numbers correct. And it can even, we don't even need to have a lot of abilities. It's just starting with, I'm able to do a magic attack and a physical attack, and the numbers make sense. Even if I just have one of each type. Okay. So we need to go into round icon. Right now, round icon has an image. But instead, I think round icon duplicate. Yeah, okay, so we removed the image off of here, but now we need to go add a new script, which will be, I guess, round icon. I need to stick these in some proper folders. And round icon can have 2 images. Image, and this can be portrait, and it's complaining because, oh, no, not that. Don't know what that is. We want to use Unity UI. Okay. And then we want to use portrait, and we want to have, I guess, highlight. Should probably be M underscore. I think that's the naming convention I'm trying to use. I still need to do a pass though, because the naming convention has gotten away from me over time. Okay, and then this thing is also going to need to have a reference to a unit to know which unit it's referencing, or which unit it cares about. No, words. Which unit it is referencing. That is the correct way to say that. Okay. Then it's going to need the exact same logic here. I don't think it needs this special logic because it's not actually basing anything off of stats like the HP and the UI was. So I think we just need a on select, on deselect, and on target button for this guy. And then we need the same functions here. And then instead of alphaing this thing, I think it's, I can literally just set game object set activity to true. We turn on the highlight when selected, and we turn off the highlight when deselected. Yeah, that's it. Cool, same logic. So now we just need to set up this round icon script. Let's see. So we have round icon, which now needs the round icon script. And then it's going to need 2 images, the portrait, and then it's going to need the highlight. Now, I think for the highlight, what we do is we do 1.1, 1.1, 1.1. Yeah, and now we have a shadow that encompasses the portrait that looks the same. It'd ideally be nice if it was white, but no, there would be some more nonsense I'd have to do to make that happen. Okay, so now this thing needs a reference to the highlight, and it needs a reference to the portrait. Unit could honestly be a private variable, so it doesn't show up. Okay, and then that should be all we have to do to get the round icon to work. Now we just have to... Oh, Amorphous, if you're still there, thank you for the 34 months. I forgot to say it. Much appreciated. As always. You're ridiculous. Thank you. Okay. So this does this. Now we have to go into the spot where we generate these things. Where was it that we generate these things? Unit selector? No, it's the turn order. Here. Go to definition. We navigated the maze. Good job, us. All right, so now we can get object.result, and we can do dot get component round icon, which we will save a reference to, and then round icon dot highlight and portrait shall be set to the sprite. And then we also need to call round icon dot init, and we need to pass in the unit. And then I think Ben's your uncle. Holy productive Batmans. This is super good. If this works, which all indications should be that it does. It does not. But it does not because we didn't set it to off by default. That's the problem. It needs to be off by default. Okay, no selection. Highlight looks kind of awful in some spots. Honestly, could just be a matter of scaling it up a little bit more. It's just getting clipped a little bit. It's just placeholder anyways. But even as a placeholder thing, it now allows me to tell which unit I have selected. The current selected unit doesn't get highlighted right now. I don't care. Cool. That is that. I think we've accomplished everything that I wanted today. Yep. Yeah, that's true. Okay, yeah, I got, just realized I have a WoW raid in 20 minutes, and I really should get over there. I'm going to have to call it for here, but this was kind of where I was thinking of calling it anyways. So we've got, units selecting on the bottom bar. We have a health status section there. We have a status section for all the units. We also have it set up so that when a unit dies, they get removed from the bottom bar, and the game continues to progress, because at the start of today we had it so that when a unit died, the game froze because it didn't remove them from the turn order. Let's see if we can get 2 units. Thanks for stopping by, Amorphous. Yeah, I also find it very cool just seeing the progress. But yeah, we have it so that we can kill units and the game will continue to progress. So that was the last thing. But yeah, this is all working. So the next thing, like, we have all the information now. I think there's not a lot that we're not telling the user to make this prototype work. Because there was a lot of times where I kept trying to do the ability work and just be like, I can't make this ability stuff work because I can't tell who I'm attacking or what, or whose turn it's going to be. But now I think we have all the information we need to actually start building something. I think probably I'll do a bit of that off stream because it's going to be a lot of me crunching numbers and just looking at equations and trying stuff and poking and just feeling out whether or not the numbers are good. But hopefully next time we can look at kind of an early prototype of combat. Yeah. I'm just sitting here trying to think of anything else, and I can't think of anything else that's stopping me from being able to start playing with numbers and getting things a little bit closer. Cool. But like I said, I have to go. For now, though, this is going to be Tolhi signing out. Later, guys.